Hello, freshmen. We are in week 8 of distance learning. Are we? Week 7. I'm so sorry. Getting ahead of myself. We are in week 7 of distance learning. Last week, we took a look at Mr. Robert Frost, one of the most prolific and popular American poets. As you remember, if you did the assignment yet, he was notably a favorite amongst a lot of people. Um, Spoke at JFK's inauguration and was just kind of an American, a man's man, American, sweet kind of guy. His most famous poem, though, actually is what we're going to be taking a look at for this week. And it is called The Road Not Taken. So by now, hopefully, you've followed your directions and you have listened to Mr. Frost himself read A Road Not Taken. I don't know, his voice is so calm and soothing, and I like to listen to him read his own poetry. So this is one of my very favorite poems ever. The thing about it is, though, is when you analyze it, most people, like 90% of people, think that the meaning or the theme of the poem is one thing. Doing your own thing, walking to the beat of your own drum, doing the thing that not everybody does, right? Not following the crowd. And in all actuality, even though that's great and you can take that away from it, that's actually not why Frost wrote the poem. It wasn't the meaning of it at all. But people have taken just the last three sentences or the last 3 lines of the poem and given it their own meaning. And that's not how Frost meant it at all. So we're going to read it together, and I'm going to kind of be dissecting it for you guys so that you know exactly what the meaning of the poem is. Now, with all poetry, it's important that not only do we know and analyze it for what the author meant, but it's also still important that we put our own take and our own spin on it, because that's how poetry speaks to us. And when I say poetry, I'm not just talking about poetry like this that we're getting ready to read. I'm talking about music too, because what is music? It's poems set to instrumental melodies, right? So when you listen to music, it makes you feel a certain way. You find something in your life, maybe with some songs that you can relate to. It makes you feel a certain way. And that's because you relate the lyrics of the song, the poem, to something in your own life. It might not mean what the songwriter meant for it to be, but we put our own connotations on it, right? And so that's what a lot of people have done with The Road Not Taken. And while they've taken that out and made it the theme of the poem, the actual theme of the poem is still pretty cool as well. So let's read it together, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. I would definitely have a notebook out with some notes. I've been doing and teaching this poem for 14 years now, and I still take notes on it every single year. So I definitely go ahead and get your notepad out so that you can write down some stuff that I'm going to say, because you're going to need it for your assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video real quick, and I'll give you guys time to, or you can pause the video, one or the other. I'll give you guys time to find your paper and your pen. Okay, so now that you've gotten your paper, your pencil, your pen, something to write with, we're going to read this poem and we're going to talk about it a little bit, okay? So we've already listened to Robert Frost read it, but I'm going to read it. You guys can read it along with me if you want to, however is most comfortable for you. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then the other, just as bare, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that passing there, had worn them both really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. All right. Love this poem so much. It does have a specific rhyme scheme. If you'll remember, we talked about rhyme scheme. That's the end rhyme in a poem that is labeled. And it's got lots of imagery in it, everything that a poem should have, right? So when we talk about this poem and we say two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I'm sorry that I couldn't travel both of them, because one looks good and one looks good, and I don't know how I'm going to make a decision. I'm just one person. I can't split myself in two and travel both of them. So I have to make a decision, right? So I stood there for a really long time and I looked at both of them down as far as I could until the road curved and I couldn't really see. I couldn't see anymore where they went. So it's really not telling me anything, right? I don't know. I don't know what's down this path and I don't know what's down this path. And then the other one, it was just as good. And this is where people get confused because they think that Frost is telling us that one is better than the other, that one hasn't been worn, one hasn't been used as much as the other one has. And Frost does not say that anywhere. He says, then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Both of them were grassy, okay? Because it was grassy and wanted wear. There, though as for that passing there, had worn them really about the same. This one's grassy and wants wear. Well, this one's grassy and wants wear too. It wants somebody to travel down it too. He says, time had worn them really about the same. And I'm in the third stanza right here. And both that morning equally lay, they're equal, in leaves no step had trodden black. I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing that way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I'm going to take this path over here, and this one will be here tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or 5 years or 10 years. I can come back and take this one and see where it goes. But I have to make a decision. So I'm going to take this one, and I'll save this one for another day. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm going to try and talk myself into the fact that I will come back and find out where this other road leads. But life moves and goes on and we get busy. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I know that I'll never come back and find out where this road takes me. So I'm going to have to just go with this decision over here. And the last stanza, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence. Look up the word hence and write it down in your notes. Okay, hence. I'm going to pause the video. You guys look up the word hence. Okay, so you guys looked up the word hence, and what does it mean? Right, in the future, right? Somewhere ages and ages hence in the future, I will be telling this story that two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I think I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. Did he take the one less traveled by? Ages and ages hence, you might trick yourself into thinking that you took the one that was less traveled, but you didn't, because he's already told us that they were equal. So this poem doesn't mean doing what everybody else hasn't done. It doesn't mean that you're taking the road less traveled and look at you being a nonconformist. It's not what it means. This poem's actually about regret. This poem is about wandering more about what you didn't do than what you did do. It's about thinking to yourself, whatever decision that you make, Sometimes, a lot of times, we end up questioning and doubting why we didn't take the other one. Have you ever been in that situation before? Yeah. Let's just make it in the simplest of terms, right? You're in the grocery store and there's two long lines. One appears to be that the people's items in their cart are less than this line over here. So most of us go to that line, right? And then the line that looked really, really busy just keeps right on rolling, while the line that you're in is asking for price checks and they don't have tickets on stuff. And you think to yourself, why didn't I just take that one over there? This poem's about regret. That's what it's about. And it's based in some truth of Frost's life. A lot of people asked him about this. This is his most famous poem because people think that it's about doing your own thing and not being a conformist. And your life is great because you did the thing that not everybody does. And that's not what it's about. And so when people would ask Frost about it, he would say, ooh, you got to be careful with that poem. That's a tricky one. He knew it, and he wrote it on purpose like that. He knew. He had a friend, a very good friend, and who was also a writer, and his name was Edward Thomas. And they would get together and talk about their writings and things of that nature. Interesting. He'd talk about they talk about their writing, and they talk about what was happening in the world at that point in time. And they would go out into the woods and they would talk about life, taking walks together. And every single time they would come to a fork in the road, and Thomas, his friend, Edward Thomas, would have to make a choice as to where they went. And it seemed like every time Frost said if they took path A, halfway through it, he'd be really mad because they didn't take path B. What's down there? What did I miss out on? And that's what it's about. Okay? That's what it's about. It's about regret. It's about wondering what would have happened if you would have gone this way instead of this way, which is the complete opposite of what most people think that the theme of the poem is about. He wrote this poem in jest, as a joke, but people didn't take it that way. His friend Edward didn't take it that way. And it ended up being this really serious, life-altering poem about decisions that people really took with gusto, right? When he talks here in the last stanza, I shall be telling this with a sigh. When he talked about a sigh, like, he was meaning that as a joke, because they would stand at a crossroads for forever while Thomas decided which way they wanted to go. And he was joking about it, like, oh my gosh, Edward, come on, make the decision. Didn't take it that way. And so it's just so ironic to see how people analyze a poem, and that is not at all what the author meant it to be. So yeah, it's about regret. Whichever road that you take, you end up being sorry that you didn't take the other one. You end up being inquisitive that you didn't make this decision instead of making this decision. It's pretty cool. So anyway, The Road Not Taken, one of my very favorites. So the next thing that you need to do is check out your assignment. Talk to you guys later.